Okay, guys, I see more people joining in. How is everybody doing? Um, the markets have been pretty volatile over the past few days, but today we're going to be focusing on just one token. We're going to be discussing everything Ethereum. All right. I want to know from you all, how are you feeling about Ethereum? Are you guys holding Ethereum? Are you holding any of the Ethereum tokens, whether it's the ecosystem tokens or any projects within Ethereum that you are sort of putting into your watch list? I want to know from you guys, how many of you are actually Ethereum bulls? I want to know right now. Put your comments in the Q&A box. I'd love to see your where everybody's standing with Ethereum right now, and then we'll get into the discussion. I can already see that a lot of people seem to be holding Ethereum. Um, if you have any questions regarding Ethereum as well, we will have a dedicated Q&A round as well uh, towards the end of the session. So just stick around for that. All right. Okay, folks, let me get started with today's session. Um, Let me first make sure that all of the slides and everything are fine. Looks like everything is good. Cool. Okay, let's get started, guys. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to another Learn with Mudrex webinar. If you've been joining us for these sessions, you already know exactly how these work. This is where we actually break down some of the biggest trends in crypto, some of the biggest narratives, and the strategies that will actually help you ultimately grow in crypto. And today we've got something a little extra special, and that's simply because today is Ethereum's 10th birthday. It's been a decade since Ethereum's mainnet launched. 10 years since we had this experiment in, programmable money and smart contracts. And yeah, it's been an incredible last decade, just in terms of innovation, just in terms of the opportunity that Ethereum has brought to the entire crypto space. Now, that being said, I know Ethereum isn't exactly the new shiny thing in crypto anymore. Over the past few years, we've seen hundreds of other projects trying to actually challenge Ethereum. There have been faster chains, there have been cheaper chains, there have obviously been more flashier branding as well, all claiming to be like the next Ethereum killer or replace it as the most dominant layer one, right? And for a while, I'll be honest, some of those narratives actually started gaining traction. They are still gaining traction. There were moments where Ethereum felt a little out of favor. Gas fees were pretty high, scaling was still in progress, and there were newer chains which were just grabbing market attention a lot more faster. Okay. But the thing is, while everyone else was busy trying to overcome or beat Ethereum, Ethereum has actually quietly been evolving behind the scenes. Okay, and now 10 years in, I believe it's more relevant than ever. All right. It's not just you can't just view it as a blockchain, but you should see it as the foundation of the entire decentralized internet that we're seeing right now, right? And it's been the launchpad for DeFi projects, for NFTs. The entire on-chain economy right now actually lives on Ethereum. All right. A major chunk of this lives on Ethereum till today, right? It's also the most battle tested. You should recognize that Ethereum has been through several market cycles now. Okay, since 2015, it's now currently it's in the third bull run, which means that it's been through bear markets. And even during those testing times, Ethereum has come out on the other side, right? And stronger on the other side as well. Okay, so in today's session, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to look at Ethereum, where it began, how it began, and fast forward to where I think Ethereum is going to go this market cycle. So for any of you who's actually holding Ethereum, this session is for you. Okay, I think Ethereum as a risk to reward investment right now makes absolute sense. Absolute sense. All right. And I'm not only going to talk about Ethereum, I'm also going to talk about different coins within the Ethereum ecosystem that I am very, very bullish on. All right. So pay attention to that section of this session. We will definitely be touching upon some of the coins. I also want to hear from you. Which coins are you looking at from the Ethereum ecosystem as well? Maybe we can discuss that as well. Okay. All right. Let's get into this session. Cool. So here's what I'll be covering. All right. First, we'll start with the basics. We'll explain what is Ethereum, what's actually sets it apart from Bitcoin, and how it works. Then we'll dive into how Ethereum has evolved over the last decade. We'll talk about some major upgrades. Um, Following this, we'll actually explore the real world adoption that's happening on Ethereum today. Okay, we'll talk about banks building on chain, stable coins, and we'll also talk about tokenized assets being moved on Ethereum and why this is so significant. Okay. And after this, we'll talk about the rise of institutional interest in ETH because, yeah, institutions are not just, they're not watching anymore. They're positioning, they're building, and they're investing heavily into Ethereum. Okay. This is a trend that is insanely bullish for ETH as an asset class. All right. After that, we'll explore the ecosystem angle. And this is where I think everybody has to pay attention. We'll talk about why looking at ETH as a sector or a broader narrative in its own right might be the best risk to reward setup we've seen in years for crypto, right? And finally, we'll end with the forward-looking stuff. What does the next 10 years of Ethereum look like? Um, what are the opportunities? And how can you, as investors, think about positioning yourself across the Ethereum ecosystem? Okay, not just with ETH itself, but I'll talk about some projects within ETH that I think are very, very bullish right now, right? And of course, in the end, I'll have some time for all your questions, all right? Now, before I get started, I want to know from all of you who in the audience here is holding ETH. I want to know if you guys have some exposure to ETH already in your portfolio. Put your comment down in the Q&A box, all right, so that I can see it. Um, all right. Yes. Okay, Siddhant. Yeah, great. Great. And out of your allocation, how much percentage of ETH are you holding in your portfolio right now? Given your total portfolio, how much percentage is on ETH? So like we can get an idea if you guys are positioned well for the next almost 35%. Great. Great. 20%, 15%. Great. See, this sort of allocation to ETH is very, very healthy during this market cycle, especially. I think we're entering that phase now. If you were here for the last webinar where I discussed, altcoin season, I think it's progressing the way we thought it would as well. Of course, there will be times when there is a sideways market, but we're seeing money getting rotated into ETH. Even if you see the ETF inflows in Ethereum right now, it's outpacing Bitcoin. All right. So that there itself is a sign that money is being rotated. All right. Amazing. Great. So we have a lot of Ethereum investors today, and I want you all to pay very, very close attention for the next hour or so because I think you guys are very well positioned for the next coming months. But I'm going to give you some alpha plays as well. Since you're already holding ETH, I think uh, there's much more upside and a lot more opportunity if you look at the ecosystem around ETH, and I'll come to that towards the end. All right. So let's just get into the topic now. Yeah, of course, as always, any coins that I'm going to be suggesting here, just don't treat it as financial advice. This is purely for educational and information purposes only. And also, uh, always conduct your own research. I'm going to give you the tools, I'm going to give you the platforms for you to do your own research. So pay attention to that as well, right? Great. Okay. Cool. For any of you who's joining me now for the first time, I'm just going to give you a quick introduction of myself and I'll give you a recap of how my journey in Ethereum started as well. All right. So my name is Anush, and I'm part of the research team here at Mudrex. What that means in simple terms is that I spend most of my days deep in the crypto rabbit hole, analyzing market trends, tracking emerging narratives, identifying under the radar tokens as well, and yeah, just analyzing the different narratives that crypto has to offer. Okay. Every day there's a new hot token, there's a new layer one, a new project claiming to be the next big thing. Some of them are genuine breakthroughs, don't get me wrong, but many are just hype cycles driven by, memes or just pure speculation. Okay. And what I do is I try to cut through that noise to ask the tougher questions. Does this project solve a real problem? Is there actual usage? Is there actual demand? Is this just a pump, or does it have some sort of staying power? All of these questions, right? Uh, and in all my years of doing this, looking across, dozens of blockchains, dozens of ecosystems and coins, one name has consistently stayed relevant, right? It's evolved with the times and it's continued to actually innovate. And that is simply just Ethereum. I can't look past Ethereum, right? Ethereum has been a dominant part of my portfolio since I first got serious into crypto. And like many of you, I've seen it all. I've seen the explosive rallies, the brutal corrections, the gas fees, the memes, all of the different FUD that was happening with Ethereum. Uh, then, of course, all of the headlines predicting that ETH is going to be overtaken by the next layer one. So yeah, of course, it hasn't been smooth sailing. Ethereum has been tested technologically, socially, and financially. But the one thing that's always stood out to me is that no matter what the market throws at Ethereum, the pace of development never stops. The builder community is the most active. The number of developers working on Ethereum or building on Ethereum is still the highest in the crypto space by far. Okay. That's just a fact. That's a data point. All right. And this is very rare because, see, the thing is, in most industries, when competitors actually start circling in, the original project often gets outpaced pretty quickly. Okay, they slow down, they lose some sort of relevance, or they stick to very rigidly to their original path. Okay, but what I've seen with Ethereum is that it actually adapts. It's moved from proof of work to proof of stake. It's scaling consistently. It's absorbing the lessons of newer chains and using those lessons to improve without losing its core values. And I think that is very key. And yeah, it's a big deal. All right. Um, Now, I'm not saying Ethereum is perfect. It's not. Okay. There are valid criticism, and some of the competition has made real strides, specifically Solana, Sui, different layer ones. But the depth of Ethereum's ecosystem, yeah, and the pace of innovation, it's very hard to replicate. Okay. Um, and that's why I wanted to dedicate today's session to Ethereum, because I do believe we are at a turning point, not just for ETH as an asset, but for Ethereum as the foundation of a new sort of internet infrastructure. Okay. Uh, so as we move into the next part of the session, just keep that in mind. We're not just talking about price charts or old narratives. We're actually unpacking one of the most long-lasting experiments in decentralized open source development, right? The world has ever seen. The world's never seen something built like this on top of the internet, right? And if history is any guide, Ethereum's next 10 years might just be even more impactful than its first. Okay, I know that's hard to believe, but I do believe that the next 10 years is going to be even more impactful, right? Okay, let's get into it. Now that we've set the stage, let's just get into the heart of the topic, starting with the basics. Okay, I'm going to answer exactly what Ethereum is, and how it is different from something like Bitcoin. All right. So most people's first introduction to crypto is through Bitcoin. Okay, mine too. And that makes sense. Bitcoin was the first, it's the OG. It was created as a form of digital money, a decentralized, alternative to traditional currencies. There's a fixed supply, it's hard coded into the system, and it was designed to be peer-to-peer money without needing any sort of bank or government to regulate it. Right? Now, Ethereum basically took that idea and expanded on it in a pretty groundbreaking way. Okay. Think of this: Bitcoin as digital money, Ethereum is more like a digital computer. Okay. It's a platform that allows anyone, anywhere to write and run code on a decentralized network. And that's where the magic of something called smart contracts comes in, right? Now, I know smart contracts can sound a bit intimidating, but really at its core, a smart contract is just a piece of code that runs exactly as it's written. There's no middleman, no one in the middle to approve it. Basically, if X happens, then Y happens. That's it. Okay. Think of it like digital rules that enforce themselves. Okay. I'll give you a quick example of how this might work. Let's say you and I make a bet. All right. If India wins the cricket match, you pay me 100 rupees. If they lose, I pay you 100 rupees. Now, normally we'd need a third person to hold the money and make sure they pay out correctly. But with a smart contract, we can write a bit of code that says if India wins, send 100 rupees from wallet A to wallet B. If they lose, send it the other way. Now, once it's on the blockchain, it'll execute automatically. No trust needed, right? That's what Ethereum enabled. And that basically changed everything. It opened the door to a whole new world of applications in crypto. Think like DeFi, decentralized finance, NFTs, DAOs, on-chain identity, gaming, you name it, right? There were new sectors that were born because of Ethereum. So while Bitcoin was, the first use case for blockchain technology, Ethereum basically gave developers a sort of toolkit to build all sorts of use cases using blockchain. All right. Um, it basically moved crypto from just money to programmable money, and then from programmable money to an entire decentralized internet. Okay. That's why Ethereum is often called the backbone or the infrastructure layer of Web3, right? Now, let's talk about ETH, the token that we're investing in. Okay. A lot of people get confused here. So let me just clarify. Ethereum is the name of the network, the protocol, the blockchain. ETH or Ether is the native token that powers that network. Okay. You can think of ETH kind of like the fuel that makes the entire system run. You use ETH to pay for transactions, to deploy these smart contracts, and to interact with all of the apps that is built on this network, built on Ethereum. And over time, ETH itself has evolved beyond just being a sort of utility token that we call it as, right? Today, ETH is being treated more and more like a legitimate asset class. Now, this is the question which needs a lot of clarification, all right? What gives ETH value? Okay, it's a great question, but there's a few layers to it, right? Firstly, like I said, utility. ETH is needed to use the Ethereum network. Every time you make a transaction or interact with a smart contract, you're paying fees or gas fees in Ethereum or ETH, right? The more demand there is to use Ethereum, whether it's for DeFi, NFT, gaming, whatnot, the more demand there is for ETH, right? That is one. Next is scarcity. With the move from proof of work to proof of stake and upgrades that have happened during that time, ETH actually became deflationary at times. That means more ETH is being burned than created, which basically reduces the supply over time. All right. The third point is staking yield. If you stake your ETH, right, you can earn passive yield for helping secure the network. So that makes it behave more like a sort of productive asset, right? Kind of like a bond or a dividend stock in traditional finance, right? And finally, over time, as Ethereum becomes more, deeply embedded in financial systems and adopted at massive scale, ETH is starting to be viewed like the internet sort of collateral, right? Something you can borrow against, lend, stake, or even use in real world finance. So all of this is what gives ETH intrinsic value beyond just, speculation. Okay. Uh, Let me just give you a simple analogy here, right? If Ethereum is like a city, ETH is the currency of that city. You use it to pay for services, you rent digital space, vote on policies, fund new projects. The more valuable the city becomes, the more valuable its currency also becomes, right? Now, as Ethereum continues to grow, bringing in more users, more builders, more real world integration, ETH becomes the asset that captures this growth, right? So when people say Ethereum is the future of the internet, they're also saying ETH is a way to own a piece of that future. And that's the most important point I want everybody here to digest, all right? If you're holding ETH, you need to know that, right? Now, again, this isn't financial advice. ETH is still a volatile asset and it's not without risk, of course. But what makes ETH different from, meme coins is that its value is deeply, deeply tied to real usage, to real infrastructure, and to innovation that's happening right before our eyes, right? Cool. Now that we've covered, what Ethereum is and how it's different from Bitcoin, and where ETH gets its value, let's go one step deeper, right? Let's actually talk about the real magic of Ethereum and that is its ecosystem. Now, I know that the word ecosystem gets thrown a lot in crypto. You hear about this always, Ethereum ecosystem, Solana ecosystem. So let me just break that down, what I actually mean when I say that. Now, when we talk about Ethereum's ecosystem, we're talking about everything that's been built on top of the Ethereum blockchain over the past 10 years. Not just ETH, the token, but thousands of apps, projects, tools, tokens, and networks that actually rely on Ethereum's technology to run. So think of ETH like the base layer. Ethereum is the base layer. It's the foundation of a sort of digital city. The Ethereum blockchain is the ground, right? Solid, decentralized, secure. And built on top of that ground, you've got all sorts of things. You've got DeFi, you've got NFTs, you've got gaming worlds, communities, identity systems, all of this, right? So that is the ecosystem. Okay. And it's massive. If you just have a look at the picture right now in this chart, you can see that this is actually not even the total ecosystem. Okay. This is just a glimpse of Ethereum's entire ecosystem. But as you can see, the the vastness that Ethereum covers, right, in terms of different sectors is immense. And I'll go a step further to say that Ethereum by far has the largest ecosystem, right? And I do not think that any other layer one will come close to Ethereum's ecosystem for a while. All right. I will go as far as to say that even though I am a Solana bull, I don't think Solana is there yet in terms of that capacity of holding such a large ecosystem. All right. Okay. So let me just put it into perspective on how big it is as well, right? Ethereum today is by far the largest blockchain ecosystem out there. It has the highest number of developers building on it. It processes the most smart contract activity every day. It hosts the majority of dApps or decentralized applications. And in terms of money locked into these apps, which is usually measured as total value locked or TVL, Ethereum is by far the clear leader. All right. Um, so yeah, let's just break it down. Ethereum is what we call a layer one blockchain. And what that means is it's the base layer. Simple as that. It's the main chain where all transactions and smart contracts are recorded. Now, when you use an Ethereum app, okay, say you use Uniswap, and you're swapping tokens on Uniswap, you're actually interacting with Ethereum's layer one. Okay. But that's just the beginning because developers have taken Ethereum's core capabilities, smart contracts, decentralization, token standards, and built an entire universe of protocols on top of it. Okay. So, like I mentioned, what is the ecosystem? Uh, you can see many, right? There is DeFi, decentralized finance, right? Um, Basically, DeFi allows you to trade, lend, borrow, earn yield, all without banks. Okay, and nearly all of the biggest DeFi protocols live on Ethereum. Okay, I'm talking about Uniswap, talking about Aave, Lido, all of these live on Ethereum. Okay, uh, right now, and I think this is an incredible stat that I came across. Ethereum accounts for more than 59% of all DeFi activity across the entire crypto market. Okay, so that's around 83 billion in total value locked just on Ethereum. And no other blockchain comes close. To just put it into perspective, the next largest is Solana and then BNB, and they have around 7% to 5% share each. All right. So that just gives you the perspective of how huge this is, right? Ethereum is still the dominant chain, right? Um, then we have other use cases as well. We have NFTs and digital collectibles. Admittedly, NFTs have had their moment in the spotlight back in the day in 2021, but they're showing a resurgence there as well, right? And NFTs and digital collectibles are still a massive use case uh, for Web3 as a whole, right? Then comes gaming. Gaming as well, it's just blockchain gaming started on Ethereum. And if you see just the number of gaming applications being built, most of them are on Ethereum, right? We had stuff like Axie Infinity, Sandbox. If some of you were there in the 2020, 2021 bull run, you'll know these names. But we're seeing other gaming projects like Superverse coming on as well. But guess what? They're being built on Ethereum as well, right? So yeah, there's just continuous innovation happening there. Then comes decentralized autonomous organizations, right? These are like basically, can think of them like internet native communities or basic companies that are run on code instead of managers. Okay. Right now, if you see on Ethereum, there are over 2,000 DAOs, right? Some of them are running DeFi protocols, others are funding public goods, coordinating events, or even buying real world assets like land, right? And finally, I would say one of the biggest and underrated sectors is stable coins and real world assets. Okay. Uh, Ethereum is the main home for stable coins like USDT, USDC, all right? Uh, And in fact, more than 50% of all stablecoin value lives on Ethereum right now. Just think about that for a second. And now we're starting to see traditional financial assets like US treasuries or real estate being tokenized on Ethereum too. So that's a trend which is RWA, real world assets. It's early, but it's growing very, very fast. Okay. Even BlackRock is getting involved in tokenizing assets on Ethereum. Okay. And that's it. That's a huge, huge deal there, right? Now, okay, so we've talked about Ethereum's foundations, the size of its ecosystem, but now let's just zoom out for a second and talk about the bigger picture. Let's actually discuss where are we in Ethereum's market cycle right now for this cycle. I'm not going to talk about 10 years from now. I want to talk about a couple of months from now. Okay. We'll discuss what's different this time, what kind of catalysts are actually moving ETH's price today. Um, and we'll wrap it up all together to give you a clear idea of where I think Ethereum's headed. All right. Now, if you've been in crypto for a while, you'll quickly realize that Ethereum, like most of crypto, moves in cycles. There are, boom times where everything feels like it's going to the moon, and there are brutal, brutal bear markets as well, where the market tests your patience, your conviction also. But Ethereum's been through several of these already. Let's start back in 2017. Okay, this was Ethereum's first, real breakout cycle. ETH went from around $10 to nearly $1,400 in a matter of months. All right. And the main catalyst back then was something called the initial coin offerings boom. Basically, Ethereum was the launch pad for thousands of new tokens. Projects would raise, millions just by issuing ERC20 tokens on Ethereum, and investors needed ETH to participate. That drove a ton of demand and a ton of hype. Okay. But most of those projects didn't go anywhere. The whole thing became a bit of a bubble. And when it popped, Ethereum crashed pretty hard and dropped more than 90% from its all-time high. Okay, so that was Ethereum's first major cycle. Then came 2020, 2021, and the story was very, very different here. Okay, this was my first cycle with Ethereum. This time it was, it wasn't just speculative tokens being launched. There were real applications being used. This was a time when DeFi took off. Platforms like Uniswap, Aave, MakerDAO were actually handling billions in volume. And then NFTs exploded. There were CryptoPunks, Bored Apes, um, trading at insane valuations. All of that happened on Ethereum. All right. Uh, so in that market cycle, ETH went from basically under $100 all the way to nearly $4,900 in late 2021. All right. But still, even after that cycle, the driving force was mostly crypto native, meaning it was retail money, crypto influencers. These were the players actually moving the market. All right. Institution were watching though, for sure. A few started dipping their toes in, maybe buying a little ETH through grayscale or futures, but they weren't in at all. Okay. So where are we now in 2025? 2025 is a completely different landscape. What's happening right now with Ethereum is different. Simple as that. Yes, price wise, we've seen a strong recovery now. ETH is back in the 3,000 700 to 4,000 range right now. It's climbing steadily after pretty brutal couple of months in the start of the year. But what's really changed isn't the price, it's who's buying. And that's what I want you all to focus on. Because for the first time in Ethereum's history, we're seeing real institutional adoption. Okay, let's start with the biggest milestone. Last year, the US finally approved spot Ethereum ETFs, and that was a game changer. Okay, it gave institutions, it gave family offices, hedge funds, retail investors uh, a clean and sort of easy way to buy and hold ETH. Okay, just exposure to Ethereum through the same brokerage account they use for stocks and bonds. That's a huge, huge deal. All right. And since that approval, we've seen some serious, serious momentum. We're talking about over 5 billion in net inflows into ETFs in just a few months. BlackRock's ETF alone has already crossed 10 billion in assets under management. Week after week, we're seeing consistent inflows now, even outpacing Bitcoin on some days, like yesterday as well. All right. And that's just something we've never seen before in any Ethereum's previous bull markets. But it's not just Wall Street. Okay. We're also seeing public companies buying ETH and holding it as a treasury asset. In 2017, zero. We couldn't even think of this, right? Absolutely, you would be called crazy if you thought that in 2017. 2021, yeah, maybe one or two very, very small investments. But in 2025, this has completely flipped. So we're seeing companies like SharpLink Gaming, Bitmine are now holding hundreds of thousands of ETH, more than the Ethereum Foundation itself, in fact. Okay. Uh, this is actually pretty wild, all right? Because what it shows is that ETH is now being treated as a long-term strategic asset, not just a trade, not just a sort of bet on a technology, but as a reserve asset, something worth holding through many, many cycles. So this is dynamic we simply didn't have in the past, and it's a major reason why this cycle is different, right? Ethereum's narrative is evolving. See, in 2017, Ethereum was a platform for ICOs. In 2021, it was the backbone for DeFi and NFTs. But in 2025, I strongly believe Ethereum is starting to be viewed as an infrastructure, something as foundational as the internet. Okay. And ETH, the asset, is evolving into a kind of digital economic bandwidth with institutional grade yield, scarcity, and utility. That's what I truly believe, and a lot of analysts as well. All of this is happening in tandem with ETH actually becoming more deflationary. All right. Uh, so what comes next, right? Here's what I'm watching, and I want you all to watch. ETF inflows, do they keep accelerating? So far, they've been steady and they've been strong. More companies adding ETH to their treasuries. This is the second point. Third is the macro environment, of course. If interest rate starts coming down, I think ETH could have a very, very strong rally because the mind share is with ETH now. Everybody's talking about Ethereum. And I do believe that that altcoin rotation has already started. So if we see this rate cut in the US, I think ETH will move quick, very, very quick. Okay. Then, of course, future Ethereum upgrades. All right, I won't go into the technicalities of these upgrades, but basically these upgrades are going to solve some of the scalability issues of Ethereum. All right. Now, the combination of institutional capital, the mainstream access via ETFs, and corporate adoption gives ETH a kind of base layer of demand that it was non-existent in like 5 years ago. All right. Um, and of course, this doesn't mean that ETH won't be volatile. It does mean, however, that this cycle might have a longer shelf life and a different sort of shape than the other ones we've seen before. All right, cool. Okay, so we've talked about where Ethereum is in its market cycle and how this time around the big money isn't just coming from, retail traders or investors, but from institutions. Now, the next logical question is why, right? What's changed that's made Ethereum more attractive and more scalable than ever before? And the answer honestly lies in something that doesn't always make headlines, but it's Ethereum's upgrades. Okay. Because over the last 10 years, Ethereum hasn't just grown in terms of value, it's actually evolved massively in how it works under the hood. Okay. Um, so in this part, I just want to break down some of Ethereum's biggest upgrades that have happened over the past 10 years or so. But I will talk about the two upgrades which I believe have fundamentally changed how Ethereum operates for the next decade, right? Let's start with the merge, all right? This is Ethereum's biggest transformation by far, going from proof of work to proof of stake. Now, if you've heard those terms before and thought, what on earth does that mean? Let me just explain it this way. For the first 7 years of Ethereum ran on something called proof of work, which is basically the same system Bitcoin uses. You can think of it like this, okay? Proof of work is a race. Thousands of computers around the world are racing to solve a puzzle. The first one to solve it gets to add the next block of transactions to the blockchain and earns a reward in ETH. Okay. But here's the catch. Those computers use a ton of energy. We're talking enough electricity to power even some small countries. All right. Now, developers knew early on this wasn't going to scale. It wasn't efficient for Ethereum, and it didn't line up with Ethereum's long-term goals. So after years of testing and preparing, Ethereum did something no major blockchain has ever done. Okay. In September 2022, it switched to a totally new system called proof of stake. Now, instead of computers racing to solve puzzles, proof of stake works more like a security deposit system. Uh, So let me explain this how this works, right? If you want to help validate transactions and keep Ethereum running smoothly, you stake or you lock your ETH. Okay, basically like some kind of deposit, right? Uh, and in return, you get rewarded over time with more ETH. But if you try to cheat the system or behave badly, you lose some or all of your staked ETH, right? So validators now have skin in the game, right? That's what keeps the system fully secure. And the benefits of this transition is huge. Ethereum instantly cut its energy use by over 99%. It reduced the amount of new ETH being created every day, and it opened the door to other major upgrades, which focused on speed and scalability. Okay. So that transition was called the merge, and it was one of the biggest, and I think it is the biggest event in Ethereum's history. Then fast forward to March 2024, Ethereum rolled out another massive upgrade. This one was called the Denken upgrade. Okay. Uh, Let me simplify what this is, all right? That upgrade's main goal was to make Ethereum faster and cheaper to use, especially for people using layer 2 networks like, Arbitrum, Optimism, or even Base. So how did it do that, right? Let's imagine Ethereum like a busy city. It's growing fast, more users, more apps, more traffic. And during rush hour, it gets very expensive, gets very crowded. To solve this, Ethereum developers built what you can think of as a express lane. That's what layer twos are, right? They're built on top of Ethereum and they help take some of the load from the main network, but they still rely on Ethereum's security, right? What this Denken upgrade did was that it made it cheaper for these layer twos to post their data back to Ethereum, right? Basically introduce something called blobs. You don't need to know the technicals. Just think of them as a more efficient way to package and store data temporarily, right? And the result, transaction fees on layer 2s dropped by 3x to even 10x in some cases. Apps just became a lot smoother, a lot faster. More users could interact with Ethereum apps without needing to pay, $20 in gas fees just to, click a button. I remember those days in 2021, 2020, where you had to pay $20 just to transact or interact with Ethereum. Okay. Since then, the evolution has been staggering. All right. Um, so where is Ethereum headed next, right? Uh, the thing is, Ethereum isn't done upgrading. There's a whole roadmap of future improvements coming. And while some of them might sound very, very technical, the goals are very clear. Basically, to make Ethereum even faster, even cheaper, and easier to use for everybody. Okay. Let me just highlight two things to keep an eye on here. You've probably heard the term sharding thrown around, but this is something that's coming, and I'll tell you what it means. Now, let's take that highway example as well again. Okay. Ethereum is a single lane highway right now. Every transaction, every app, every sort of smart contract has to grow through that one lane. That's fine when traffic is light, but of course, during peak times, it gets jammed. Okay. Sharding is like adding multiple lanes to that highway. It splits Ethereum into different sections or shards that can all process transactions in parallel. All right. That means Ethereum could eventually handle tens of thousands of transactions per second um, instead of just like 20 like in the old days, right? So full sharding is still being worked on, but Denken and the merge were big steps towards making it possible. All right. Another big focus for Ethereum moving forward is making crypto less complicated. Right now, if you're new to Ethereum, you have to deal with seed phrases, private keys, gas fees, and if you lose your wallet, of course, game over. Uh, Future upgrades are working towards smart contract wallets, which will allow things like setting up wallet recovery if you lose access, building or bundling transactions so you don't have to approve everything manually, and even paying a gas fee in tokens other than ETH. So all of these are also in the roadmap, right? So to zoom out, in the last 10 years, Ethereum has gone from a proof of work chain powered by energy hungry miners to a greener, more secure system powered by stakers or validators. Uh, these upgrades, which I mentioned, the merge, Denkin, and the ones still yet to come, are what allow Ethereum to keep growing, right? And more importantly, they show that Ethereum is not just surviving; it's being actually worked on. It's evolving, right, as we speak. Which again ties back to the bigger story of this webinar, right? Ethereum's ability to upgrade itself, to adapt to what users need, is one of the main reasons why it continues to attract developers and institutions now, and of course, investors, right? Cool. Now that we've gone over, Ethereum's journey, its major upgrades, and the shift in terms of institutional momentum, I want to bring this full circle and talk about what all of this actually means from a investor's perspective. Because sure, Ethereum invariably as a technology, it's powerful. It's gone through huge transformations. It's attracting a lot of money through public companies. But when we zoom out, how should we really be thinking about ETH and the ecosystem it powers when it comes to actually positioning our portfolios? That's the, million-dollar question, right? Um, Let me give you how I personally approach it. Of course, I want you all to do your own research, but this is how I approach Ethereum and its entire ecosystem. All right. For me, ETH is the foundation, it's the base layer. And in my view, it offers the best risk to reward ratios in the entire space. Now, why? Because ETH, it's not just a token. I'm basically investing in a sort of infrastructure. It's the digital rails everything else in Web3 is being built on. Okay. Financial apps, games, NFTs, on-chain identity, prediction markets. Ethereum is where all of it comes together. Right. And as more people use those apps, as more developers build on top, and as more money flows into these systems, what do they all need to function? They need Ethereum, right? So it just makes logical sense for me that Ethereum as a base layer would be the best risk to reward setup right now. But if you're like me and you want to go a little deeper into the ecosystem, you can go beyond ETH itself and look into different projects that are building on top of it. So let's talk about that for a second. Yeah. So at the base layer, like I said, you've got ETH. Okay. But if you're hunting for alpha, those outsized returns, you've got to look at the buildings and businesses being constructed on that land. Okay, that's where ecosystem tokens come in. Now for me, I'm personally very interested in the DeFi sector on Ethereum. I'm talking about projects like I want you all to write this down. Okay, uh, but of course these are not just limited to these projects. I'll talk about some of the other bonus projects that I'm looking at as well. But in my watch list right now, it's definitely Aave, number one. Secondly, it's Lido DAO, that's number two. And more recently, I've been looking into Ethena as well. Okay. And I'm not just looking at Ethereum's mainnet, I'm also paying close attention to what's happening on its layer twos, especially on Base. Okay, so the Base network. Uh, and one of the standout projects over there is Aerodrome Finance. It's quickly become one of the top DEXs, decentralized exchanges on Base. And it's riding that wave of activity that's starting to come in from both users and institutions. Uh, so why am I focused on these kinds of projects, right? I think that's the next question. Um, because simple regulation. Uh, See, now I know that regulation and crypto usually don't mix well, but this time it's definitely different. Uh, let's just talk about this. I've spoken about this in the previous webinars as well, but I can't, you know, I have to emphasize the Genius Act. It's a major piece of legislation that passed in the US. And honestly, I think it could very well go down as one of the most important catalysts for DeFi we've ever seen. All right. Uh, for those of you who are not familiar with what the Genius Act is, it's basically the first comprehensive law around stablecoins in the US. It sets clear rules for who can issue them, how they should be backed, and how they can be used as well. Uh, Now, this matters a huge deal for Ethereum, okay? Because stablecoins, think about it, are the lifeblood of DeFi. They are the bridge between traditional finance and what happens on chain, what happens on Web3. And guess what? Most of them live on Ethereum, right? So, with the Genius Act in place now, we are about to see a flood of new money coming on chain, regulated, compliant, and usable across the Ethereum ecosystem, right? Uh, Now, I think Ethereum-based DeFi is going to really be the sector that benefits from this because, firstly, it has first mover advantage. We already have millions of users using DeFi, and that itself adds a stamp of legitimacy to people coming in. All right. So protocols like Aave, Lido, Ethena, they're about to become the go-to destinations for yield-seeking folks, right? And not just from crypto native users like us, but from institutions, from funds, even corporates that want to put their stable coins to work, right? So, in other words, this legislation has sort of created what I would call a DeFi vacuum, and Ethereum is the only ecosystem big enough, secure enough, and mature enough to fill it right now. Okay. Um, so, yeah, here's the thing, right? I want you all to take this in, right? We've seen Ethereum go through cycles before. 2017, 2021, each had its own sort of narrative, its own catalyst. But this time around, it's definitely not hype, right? It's not just yield farming or cartoon JPEGs like we saw in 2021. This time it's regulated stable coins, it's institutional capital and public companies adding ETH to their treasuries, right? We didn't have any of that in the last two bull runs. Okay, so that's a different kind of momentum. It's quieter, but a lot more fundamental. But in my view, it's a lot more sustainable as well. Okay, so to just bring this all home, if you're trying to figure out how to approach Ethereum as an investor, here's what I'll say. Start with ETH. It's the foundation, the safer, higher conviction play. Then explore the ecosystem. Look for projects building real value, especially in sectors like DeFi and layer twos. And keep an eye on macro or any sort of regulatory shift that might happen. Okay. Because like I mentioned, things like Genius Act, they don't just change policy, right? They change where money flows. All right. I firmly believe that this is a moment where Ethereum's fundamentals and its narrative are aligning in a way we just haven't seen before. And if you can position yourself thoroughly and thoughtfully, both at the base layer and the ecosystem, like I mentioned, I believe there's massive opportunity ahead. All right? Cool. Okay, folks. Now, before we just, jump into your questions, we've got something special lined up for you today. Uh, it's not every day that, Ethereum turns 10, right? So as part of, the celebrations, we at Mudrex wanted to do something meaningful as well uh, for all of you tuning in. Just for today, um, for the 24 hours, we're rolling out something special for all ETH holders or anybody looking to hold ETH. Okay. First up, we're waiving all trading fees on ETH spot trades for the next 24 hours till midnight tonight. Um, you're basically just topping up your stack or making your very first ETH purchase. And I think today is the perfect day to do so. You don't have any fees to have to pay for. Secondly, every ETH spot trade you make today also counts as an entry into our Ethereum lucky draw. 100 lucky winners will actually get ETH worth 20 USDT, just like that. Okay. So the more you trade, the more entries you basically will rack up. Okay. Uh, by August 4th, we'll reveal all of the lucky draw winners. We will directly be in touch with you and we will distribute the rewards by then. Right. So yeah, whether you're, trading or just, soaking it all in, I think today is a celebration of a protocol that's actually changed the world. And we are super glad you're here for it. Right? Cool, guys. Okay, so lastly, if you're new to Mudrex and if you haven't made your first deposit yet, we have something else for you as well. It's pretty easy. When you deposit rupees 5,000 or more into your Mudrex account, we'll instantly credit you with 500 rupees worth of Bitcoin. There's no fine print. It's simple. It's very straightforward. Just make sure to use the promo code that you see on your screen right now, Anush 500, during your first investment, and you'll see that bonus BTC land right into your account, right? Cool, folks. I think that wraps up all of the announcements for today. Um, let's move in to your questions now. Feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box. It can be about Ethereum. It can be about the coins that I've discussed. I'm very, very curious to hear which Ethereum related coins you guys are holding. And yeah, let's just have a discussion. I'll try to get through as many as I can. So yeah, let's see what's happening here with the community. This recording will be sent. Yes, all of these sessions are recorded, and we will be sharing this on YouTube as well. Buy ETH, but its cost is too high. We can't buy and get profits in ETH for beginners, and we don't have much money. So how can we do? Can you suggest? Okay, so Siddiq, see, the thing is, you don't have to buy an entire ETH, right? You can just DCA. You can buy like a fraction of ETH, right? And I still believe there is upside. Where are we right now? We're currently trading at around, let's go on to trading view and have a quick look. I think it's around 3,800 last time when I checked. Um, I think ETH's upside is is pretty high. Okay. I know you might have heard of 10K ETH. I know that that sounds very far-fetched, but let me just put this into perspective for you. Okay. Um, Since the lows of April this year, Ethereum has rallied 171% today, till today. Yeah. Now, if I was going to take that and plot this with another 171% from here, which is extremely doable, let's just have a look, right? Let's see this. 171% from here will give you approximately, yeah, $10,428 per ETH. All right. That is not far-fetched, guys. I have seen these sort of rallies play out. Not financial advice, of course, but if you think you're late on Ethereum, just think again. Okay. You can just DCA, put small amounts. I'm not saying put everything into Ethereum. It's always good to have a diversified portfolio, but it's also good to have exposure to ETH right now, given all the points that I've mentioned. All right. Um, but yeah, if you are not looking at ETH, if you're not willing to put anything into ETH, you can look at the ecosystem tokens that I was talking about, right? Like Aave, Lido, Athena. All of these tokens have real world utility and they have a major sort of catalyst in terms of the Genius Act and money flooding into those ecosystems, right? So think of that. All right. Okay, can we buy Mudrex and sell in Binance? Yes, yes, you will be able to do that. We have crypto withdrawals. So most of the major projects, tokens, stable coins, you can buy on Mudrex and you will be able to withdraw it onto any other exchange. Is ETH and USD? No, so ETH, USDT is the stable coin. ETH is basically the protocol that I was discussing, cryptocurrency that doesn't have a peg to the US dollar. So these prices are not the same. Uh, okay. Okay, guys, I want to know from you all now, how many of you are holding Ethereum ecosystem tokens? When I say ecosystem tokens, I mean any projects built on ETH. It can be anything. It can be DeFi, gaming, meme coins. Are you anybody holding meme coins here as well? I'd love to know. Okay, some memes, ETH memes. Stay safe out there though. Okay, cool. Yeah, I see that many DeFi plays. Awesome. Um, okay, guys, there's one more thing that I just want to show you all where you can do your research. Okay. Um, Let me share my screen so that you will be able to see this as well. Uh, cool. Let me go on here. Let me take this. All right. You should be able to see the screen now. All right. Yeah. So the screen that you're seeing right now is basically the number of public companies and institutions buying ETH. Okay. Now, what can you see here? What we're seeing is a uptrend. All right, massive uptrend in terms of Ethereum inflows, ETF holdings, everything is up, right? Uh, so this is something that you need to look at from a fundamental perspective. Of course, price and technicals are one thing, but you need to see what's happening behind the scenes, right? And this is what is happening. And let's look at this. This is something that I discussed as well on stream. The dominance. Look at Ethereum's dominance when it comes to DeFi, right? 59.8% of value, of all value, lies in this one chain. We've heard of Solana, we've heard of Binance Smart Chain, Tron, Base, all of them. But look at the difference here, right? Massive, right? Now, let's look at um, yeah, let's probably look at, let's just compare some chains, okay? Let's compare Ethereum with, I would say, like the biggest competitor right now being Solana. And this is the total value locked, okay? So how much money is actually locked in this chain? So Ethereum has around 85 billion, right? Solana has 10.2 billion, okay? So there you go. That's how you do a little bit of research, right? Go on to platforms like DeFi Llama. Go on to platforms like Strategic Reserve, right? This is where you can do a little bit of fundamental analysis just to understand whether there is actual activity taking place on the network, right? Cool. All right, guys. Yeah, and just remember, folks, like I mentioned, we have this exciting offer that's happening on Mudrex right now. I can show you the screen as well so that all of you will be able to participate and grab some, ETH on spot today without any sort of fee. Let me open up the screen and actually share my screen as well. So you'll be able to see it. Okay. Okay. So if you go down here, right? Let's go to ETH, right? I'm at ETH, and you will notice that today there is zero fees. Guys, I urge you all right? I am telling you that ETH is at a pivotal point now, all right? And this is a great chance to scoop up some ETH for without any sort of fee, right? So get involved, and yeah, I hope everything uh, was clear to you all today. We will be having another session very, very soon next week. We will resume our weekly crypto briefs, where I discuss all of the, crypto news, what other coins I'm looking at for the next week as well. And we will definitely dissect the altcoin market a little bit more in detail as well. Okay. Uh, Guys, if you have any suggestions as well in terms of coins that you want me to talk about. Like today, I spoke about Ethereum at length, right? If you're looking at other coins and you want me to do a sort of deep dive on those coins, I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do it here on Learn with Mudrex, but also happy to do it on our Telegram community as well. We do a lot of live streams there. So if you have any coin, right, any large cap coin that you want me to discuss, I'd be happy to do that. All right. So put it down in the Q&A or the chat, and I'll look into it. Husky Inu coin. Okay. I don't know if that deserves an entire session, but I will definitely look into this coin. I don't even know what this coin is, to be honest. So I will have to look into this. But from the likes of it, it looks like a proper meme coin. Okay. Okay, folks, I guess on that note, happy ETH day to you all. And yeah, if you guys are holding ETH, all of you that were holding ETH, uh, continue doing so. Continue adding exposure to this ecosystem, because I do see capital flooding in, and what's going to happen to the price? It's going to skyrocket. All right. So continue doing your research and looking at the charts, and I'll be back here next week for our weekly crypto brief. Until then, guys, happy trading, happy investing, and I will see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Crypto products and NFTs are unregulated and can be highly risky. There may be no regulatory recourse for any loss from such transactions. For any queries, contact us at help@mudrex.com.